Firing staff. It's okay. Hit pause if you need to, if that makes you so queasy that you have to visit the bathroom. When you're ready, we're going to dig into this uncomfortable topic on Run a Profitable Gym. I'm your host, Mike Warkentin. Please hit subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. With me today is Andrea Savard. She's a two-brain mentor, and she's the CEO and co-owner of Firepower Fitness and Wellness in Ontario, Canada. She's been in the game for just a minute, and she's dealt with some strange HR situations. She's going to share some of those trials with you today to make you feel better about your own, and she's going to give you some advice to help you manage your staff better and avoid the pitfalls that come with being a business owner. Andrea, welcome. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, Mike.
I am excited. I know I've talked to you a little bit before the show, and I know a few of the things that you're going to present. You've got some interesting, let's say a rich history. So let's talk about some of the stuff that you've gone through. Everyone out there is going to feel a lot better by hearing some of the stuff that you've talked about, because when I asked about this in our Facebook group for mentors, you laid out a few things and a bunch of people's jaw dropped. So give us some situations. What have you dealt with?
Oh my gosh. It's so funny. We've been in the game for 20 years, and there's definitely no shortage of, what is that really happening? And more keeps happening. Oh my gosh, it's so crazy. Yeah. So a couple of the situations, one of them, we had a coach with us. She was a boxing coach and fabulous coach, wonderful person. She was going through a transgender change. And no problem with, she was a fantastic coach. She was becoming a man, and we were supportive of the journey. Everything was fantastic. We had all the accommodations needed. And as the process was going, at the same time, the coach actually got herself wrapped up, unfortunately, in a marriage of some of our members. And then drama started, and, we were trying to manage our way through this. At the same time, on the course of her transition journey, had really started to have some emotional ups and downs and challenges. Ultimately, got herself into some drugs and into some situations that finally things had come to a head that we needed to let this person go.
Wow.
The challenge being, because of the sensitivity of the society situation and, diversity, inclusion, equality, which we're totally on board with, this person had threatened us with a very public campaign that we were dismissive, that we didn't include, or what was the word I'm looking for? That we were not open to, her situation, and that we were choosing to release her based on her gender choice. Super not the case. Oh my gosh, we had to hire lawyers. We had to make sure before the firing took place that we had everything documented properly, which is a natural process. But the cost of that, our lawyer was, it was $450 an hour.
Ooh.
And we had to prepare ourselves for this.
Wow. And if we look at this and boil out to the essential details and take some of the other stuff out, you've got some sort of an interaction with another member, which I've heard I've heard that so many times in gyms, where it's like a coach and a member who maybe is married and there's something going on there. That's difficult. Then you've got some drugs going on, and you've got maybe some emotional problems. And so, unrelated to anything else, you've got three difficult things. And gym owners out there, I know if you're listening, you've dealt with all three of those things. They're very complicated. They're very difficult. The first thing that Andrea said, I'm just going to point it out. In some situations, you are going to need a lawyer. And I'll give a plug to gymlawyers.com. Matthew Becker is a great resource. He helps people out all the time. But if you don't use Matthew, there are other ones out there as well who can help you. Make sure you get your ducks in a row when you're dealing with situations, because there are situations where you absolutely have to get rid of someone, but you got to make sure you're on side of all the laws. And Andrea, was the money that you paid the lawyer worth it in the end?
Oh my gosh, it 100% was. The documentation of it, the situation, because when we did finally have to let this staff member go, she did launch a public campaign against us. We were really fortunate, and I'll talk a little bit further as we get into some of the details later, that our reputation as a business was able to shine through, and we had documented proof should any sort of legal repercussion happen from her end. We were covered that side, so the legal side was covered, but then we really were worried about our reputation and our brand image in our town. So that was a big piece for us as well.
Was that really hard for you emotionally? And the reason I ask this is because you're supportive of people, and all gym owners out there, you're supportive of your staff members going through the life challenges and changes that they have. But at some point you have to protect your business and your livelihood. So when someone's underperforming and doing damage inside your business, you kind of have to put that, soft-hearted thing aside and say, here's the reality. Like, was that really emotionally hard for you?
It's hard for me because I'm a very emotional person. Naturally, I'm very right brain and very connected to our people and our brand. So yeah, the worry, the fear of having a negative perception of our brand that we work so hard to build, very, very hard. And also because I love people, I love our staff. Oh my gosh, I give them my heart, soul, and I'd open my home to them.
Yeah.
That being able to decide where's that line? Where's that line for me that we've hit the end? That was a challenge on that one.
How long did that process go on for from the time you knew that there was a major, major problem to the firing? Do you recall?
I would think we were probably about 45, 60 days. It was longer than I had anticipated.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we were able to minimize her coaching hours and try to minimize the damage. At the same time, when people do, like you said, there's no shortage of affairs and people doing dumb stuff on their own.
Yeah.
Thankfully, that's not a reflection on us. And we've had to learn that the hard way. That is not a reflection on us. It's consenting adults doing their own thing on their own time.
Yeah.
So that wasn't effective us.
Yeah. And so you probably lost a lot of sleep in that period, I'm guessing. And there were a lot of stressful periods. My wife and I have dealt with some stuff too, where this was a situation firing a client, but still difficult. And you just sit there and all of a sudden you realize all you do all day is talk and think about this one thing. And it's not really building your business. It's actually it's preventing damage to your business, but it's not building it or doing the things that you enjoy. It's certainly not serving clients. And again, there is overlap because removing a horrible thing does help clients in the end, but you get what I'm saying. What else have you got in the archives? Any other interesting jaw droppers for us?
I got a doozy of one actually.
Okay, let's do it.
Oh, so we run on Christmas Eve, we run a massive breakfast for our members. We put it on, coaches cook for everybody. Everybody comes. There's usually about 150, 170 people.
I'm coming this year.
Oh, you should. Pancakes, fabulous. Anyways, so we show up at the gym Christmas Eve, and my assistant, before I got there, my assistant sends me a quick text. Did you take the cash box home?
Oh.
No, I didn't. She said, cash box is gone. Shit. Okay. So cash box is gone. So we realize that we now have a theft somehow. So we get to the gym, but by the time I get to the gym, I've got 30 minutes before I got 150 people coming for bacon, ham, and sausage and big workout for Christmas Eve. So we realize, okay, we got to get through this event. And then I've got to call the police because we need to report this theft that happened overnight. We do the event, goes off like a hitch. Staff are fabulous. While we're cleaning up, one of my coaches says, I thought we had more kettlebells than this. And we're looking around like, oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay. And he says, I thought we had more bumper plates than this. Oh, boy. So now we start looking and all staff do a very quick inventory and we're like, somebody's stolen our equipment and our stuff. So
no windows or doors are broken at this point, probably, right?
No. So police get called. We start like who, what, and where. Thankfully, we have an electronic access control system. And as the story started to unfold, the police are now there for property crimes. And we start realizing, shoot, this one particular coach's key fob had been used multiple times overnight and had been used the night just before the cash box theft. Well, this coach was away. She was out of town. So I called her up and I said, hey, so-and-so. Her father was actually in cancer treatment. So that's where she was, like a town about 2 hours away. Said, your key fob was used overnight. Do you have your keys with you? She says, no, I've left them at my rental apartment on my TV. She goes, oh my gosh. She goes, I have a boyfriend and gosh, he must have got my keys. She called her landlord. No, keys were gone. So she figures he's taken these keys. So anyway, she's horrified. She comes home the next day and we decide that it's probably this boyfriend that has come in the middle of the night, taking the cash box and taking the equipment. Anyway, so she comes back from her thing and I'm sitting down on the couch with her and I'm like, oh, are you okay? Like, this must be so stressful for you. Listen, you missed our staff party. Here's your Christmas bonus. And I give her a card. Can I help with anything? Do you need anything right now? She goes, no, I'm good, but thanks for helping here. And this was a coach, by the way, that we were elevating to become a manager, like one of our lead managers. She was that good with people, that good on the floor, and one of our competitive athletes too. So a couple days later, she sends me a text, hey, can we meet at 9 a.m. for coffee at this particular restaurant? I just want to start building a plan of how to earn some more money. No problem. So we make the time. She no-shows the meeting. And that's not like her. She's usually extremely responsible. So she no-shows me, and I'm pissed because I had a lot of stuff on that day.
Yeah.
I send her a text. I'm like, hey, man, I'm sitting at this restaurant waiting for you. Like, A, are you okay? And B, kind of a waste of my time here. So I head off to the gym, and my husband's there, and a few of our coaches are working out, and I get a text message, and it's from her, and she says, help me.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, are you okay? No, I need help. Okay. Do you need us? Are you at home? Yes. And anyways, I then grab a few of our coaches. One of our coaches was a Toronto staff sergeant. So we get my assistant. I bring the staff sergeant with me. He calls a few of his detectives from Toronto, meets us up at her place in Mississauga, which is about halfway. Their detectives are sitting on the street, and the police officer, myself, coach, and my assistant, we go in her apartment. And door was open. The light switches were not working. We go down the stairs and we find her bound and gagged with duct tape on her bed.
Oh my God.
And of course I panic. I'm crapping my pants. I have no idea what's happening. We have to go call 911, police ambulance. Even the media starts showing up because they're following the scanners. So they take her away to the hospital. They do all the tox screens, rape kits, all this stuff. And nothing shows up. And now we have a second police department, and I should say this is probably only 2 weeks after the property crimes theft. Now I have another town's police department, and it goes escalated from police to SBU, major crimes, and ultimately it was found out that she staged a rape on herself and bound and gagged herself with duct tape, called us for help, traumatized us in the meantime. But she was trying to deter the fact that she was the one that had stolen all our cash box, our equipment. So she was trying to throw the first police group off by setting this random stage for the second incident. And it's deeper than that, Mike. It goes on and on and on.
Oh,
But this was someone that I was like, I love you. I'm hugging her while she's got duct tape on her, telling her how much I love you, like we're here to help you. And it was all fake.
And the police unraveled all this?
The police unraveled it all.
Wow. Did you press charges, or how did this end up going?
Interestingly, because as they were doing their investigations, they did not press charges. Okay. It wasn't on us. They said, based on her mental state, and then finally police department 1 connects with police department 2, and they all kind of have their same connections. Okay. Yeah. So we had theft and lies, and it went so deep. We didn't realize that she had been going down this rabbit hole of mental decline. We didn't see it. She was my early morning coach. Oh gosh, it gets worse. She was trying to get clients to give her cash for lifetime PT. Some two like
off your books, though, like kind of under the table?
Under the table, off the books, we had no idea. Wow. But 2 of our good employee or our good clients felt so bad for her that they gave her $1,000 cash because she promised them lifetime PT. And they knew she was in this troubled state. So then they were coming forward. We're learning all this new stuff. It was a gong show.
So did you have to, this is maybe a dumb question, but did you have to fire, or was this did she just leave, or how did this resolve itself?
Ironically, she was gone. Of course, she was not welcomed back. Right. She did try to contact us. She actually mailed a letter to myself and my husband. It's a big apology. We had $800 cash stolen. She sent us $800 cash back in the mail. Oh. And she was sort of trying to make things right. But man, we were on lockdown. We were all staff. We had multiple meetings, and we can talk how we deal with this kind of stuff. But everybody was in the know. Everybody was on watch, worried if she was going to come in and try to make any problems, any scenes, try to have, any apologies. So It never happened. She ended up going away.
Just fading.
So luckily it didn't require a firing. But yeah.
And that's one that's like, I mean, your situation is extreme, but the idea of like, just if we isolate theft, that's not uncommon. And I had it, and like we weren't great at retail at our business, and we wrote off some t-shirts and some stuff went missing and so forth. But there was one period where protein supplements were regularly missing. And regularly, and like to the point where it was beyond even my own incompetence with retailing. Someone was taking stuff, and we never figured out who it was. But when we put a locked display case with a key, it stopped.
Imagine that.
Right. So something was going on in my business too. And theft is not as uncommon as you think in your business. Yeah. A tip that I'll give you, and this is something I think probably, Andrew, that you did without thinking perhaps, is if you have a shared alarm code, don't do that. Have alarm codes that are individual for each person, so you know who's coming into that business. Oh, so that's a way 100%. To do it. You had key fobs, which is the same thing. But if you do something that's trackable, then you can start to put things together. And I know that some gyms have security cameras and so forth. Make sure you cover all legal guidelines on where you're doing surveillance and things like that. Make sure you stay on side of everything. But you are definitely going to be able to figure out who was in your business. If it's just like a metal key, can't really tell. And we all know that metal keys end up, there's 50 of them out there, right? They're all over the place. No one knows what's going on. But if you have an alarm code individualized to the person, and I remember doing that, I was putting those codes in place and someone was, why are you doing this? And I was like, that's an interesting question. And I know Chris Cooper had one where someone asked him, does Chris, or asked another staff member, like, does Chris review the security camera footage regularly? And the person was like, oh yeah. And the person quit the next day. The person who asked the question quit. And Chris said, the joke I think was that Chris didn't, they weren't even on or something like that. But the person was like, had done something in the building that she assumed had been recorded and didn't want to deal with the fallout of it. It was something, I don't have the details exactly right. But
You know, it's so interesting you say that. At the time that this one coach, you know, the cash box and the equipment stealing and all the stuff, she was actually stealing little bits of equipment we discovered based on the
just shaving a salami one plate at a time.
100% had been happening for months. And anyways, we eventually got our equipment back. But another piece that our cameras helped with, this was important, that our cameras helped with theft was financial fraud. And in our case, back in many years ago, we had a policy that if nobody showed for a class, then the coach didn't need to conduct the class and they weren't paid. We've evolved that since, but at the time that was our policy. All coaches knew it. Everything was done.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah. So this is a fraud case. And what happened was in our system, in our CRM system, a coach had put in 2 members into a class, confirmed that it happened to trigger a payroll. And my assistant caught it and she said, hey, wait a minute. I was here. There was nobody in that class. And I look and I said, oh, interesting, because the 2 clients that are in the class, I worked out with them this morning. So they weren't here. And then we start saying, okay, well, somebody put some people in the class and did the thing. We knew who it was. It was the coach. And we approached him and said, hey, looks like this took place and that's fraud. And he said, what are you talking about? Oh yeah, it's falsification of information for financial gain. My sister's a police officer and one of my best resources.
I'm sure.
And he said, oh, that's really bad. And I said, you know what? It happened on my assistant's computer. So we got to figure out who did it, or she's at risk of getting fired. She wasn't. I was kind of scaring him. And he said, oh, shit, I can't believe she did that. And threw her under the bus. Oh, I can't believe she did that. That's, you know, she's a good employee. I hope you don't have to fire her. So we let him sit on it. And about 3 or 4 days later, I sat him in my office and I said, you know what? We've done some more investigating. And I had a little USB key thing, a little USB thing. And I said, I got it on camera who did it. You want to see this? And I slid it across the desk.
Not really.
And he burst into tears because he knew he was found out. Now, here's where things got crazy. We said to him, yes, this is fraud. There is no statute of limitations on pressing charges for fraud. And he was horrified, cried, and we had this conversation. And he's like, I just needed the money so badly. And I'm like, why wouldn't you come to me? You trust us, you know us. And we had this discussion. Where it got challenging as the business, Mike, is that this gentleman was a key member of our CrossFit competition team.
That's a tough
and
one.
If we fired him right away, the entire team loses their opportunity. It was our first chance at an international competition that we had qualified for. So our little team in Ontario, homegrown competition team, our first international competition was coming up in the next 3 or 4 months.
What did you
do? And then we said, what do we do?
Yep.
So we knew we had to let him go. At the same time, he offered, I want to make this right. I will work for free for the next 3 weeks. And we let him. We let him. We had to. We didn't have to. We chose to. I clarify that. We chose to. I trusted him to deliver the service on the floor. We knew he was feeling just awful about his situation and what he had done. A few months had gone by. The team was able to compete, and our intention was to let him go that Monday afterwards. I knew he knew. So the week before the competition, he said, I just got to let you know I found another job. And we're like, that sounds pretty good.
Fantastic.
So we didn't have to execute the firing. We should have.
Yeah.
But our emotions were tied to the team that had worked for years to get to that stage. And I just felt so unfair to them because they all would have been able to, or all would have lost their opportunity.
Wow. I mean, and that's a wild one where then you're kind of stuck in the situation where he says, well, I want to make this right. But there's always been this extreme breach of trust where he's done something so brutal, thrown another staff member under the bus and just lied.
Yep.
And yet you're kind of tied to it because you've got this other group of people that are relying. That was a difficult one. Like
it was very.
Yeah. Like I call it an impossible situation to some degree because you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. So I got to ask you this, like these are 3 pretty crazy stories. And I'm sure like, I know from this post that I put up in our mentors group, there are others and they are wild. There is some wild stuff, and gym owners out there, I know you've got some wild ones. So let me ask you this. The books you could write. Were any of these situations like avoidable? Like is stuff like this just part of the game, or, because one of the things that gym owners will do is like, oh, poor me, this is horrible, whatever. Is this just part of being an entrepreneur managing staff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There are some ways that we could have handled things different, of course.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
There are times where we let things go on too long because we felt for the person and you're emotionally connected to him. At the end of the day, Mike, 20 years into this, with all the stupidity we've seen, and that's just 3 off the top of our head situations of stuff that's gone on. We can't control the stupidity that people get themselves into. We've had to finally understand that other people's lives impact our ability to run our business. Mm-hmm. It's not exclusive to the gym business. It's not exclusive to a corporate. It's not exclusive to, an environment at a, police, fire, doesn't matter. People will do what they're going to do no matter what industry they're in. There's fraud and theft in every business. There's affairs and, people stepping outside their marriages and coworkers having affairs, or clients and staff having affairs. It happens. How we deal with it and where your line is that you'll choose to stand up for. That's what we have to choose. But it is just part of the game. Yep. And with experience comes, this will pass.
Yeah. And I think that's a big one. It is not sitting there and saying, poor me, and this is always happening to me. It always happens to every single business owner. Yes. I know large corporations have there is stuff set aside to cover problems like this, right? A retail store knows this much stuff is going to walk out the door without being paid for. It just happens no matter what we do. Internal stuff, HR departments, the whole thing, all of it's built to protect the businesses. As a gym owner, it's really great. These stories are horrible. And if you're living with one right now, my heart goes out to you because I know the struggles. Andrea feels the exact same way. So take some consolation in that, but try not to take it personally. Obviously, in all the 3 examples that Andrea's put out, you see people who have some personal issues going on, deep personal issues that are affecting the business, but it wasn't like they decided to attack you. And I know there are some people out there that have done that, but for the most part, it's probably best if you sit there and say, this is just a thing that happens to business owners, many of them. I'm just going to deal with it and move forward. Do you agree with that, Andrea?
I do. And we've finally come to a line that we use at our place with our staff. You're only the hot topic until somebody else does something dumb.
Yeah, that's right. It doesn't take long usually.
It doesn't take long.
The
but
news media and the politicians they know that line for sure.
Oh gosh, right?
Yeah.
You know what? And drama happens and it's irrelevant. We've had some drama just a few years ago and I'm like, how are we, 18 years into running a business, running a gym, and we're still dealing with this shit. It is mind-boggling that, no one's immune. And
people never change. People are people.
They don't. Even as I'm a two-brain mentor. I hold myself to a high standard, and I hold myself to say I feel like I should have my stuff together, and stuff will still happen, and it's no reflection of anything we're doing. How we respond and how you handle that is a reflection of your doing.
So, I mean, that's a great one. So just remember, gym owners, if you're out there, this stuff is going to happen. If it hasn't happened to you yet, it's going to at some point. And I hope it's the easiest situation you'll ever have to deal with, but it might not be. So like, what else have you learned here? And what can you advise people to kind of get through these experiences with, as little dirt on them as possible?
Great question. We rely heavily on what we call a network of trusted advisors. And I have to be able to talk about it. I'm the kind of person, I have to talk about it with people, but I need to select who I talk about it with because I'm not broadcasting it to the world. I'm not gossiping. And there's a difference, in my opinion, between I want to gossip about it or I got to get this off my chest and I need some insight how to deal with it. So we have a network of trusted advisors. I talked about my sister, who's a superintendent police officer. She is such a great resource for me because sometimes they are criminal cases. And sometimes there's potential for a civil case or a human rights issue that might come back on us. So I always get clarity. Is this criminal? Is it civil? Or is it a human rights case? So she's such a great resource. Secondly is our legal team. I have lots. They're on speed dial because if you run a business, you better have a good lawyer. Matt Becker's a fantastic one. We relied on his advice and his counsel for a number of things. So having a great legal team, but also having experienced mentors or people that you look to that are in business similar situations that may have gone through some of this before, but you trust their privacy because we got to keep this private. You have to learn how to manage the backlash. You have to learn what can you share with staff? What can our staff learn from this? And what do members need to know? And in cases of staffing, that is a person's private, HR information. So we have to be very strategic on what information is positioned to your membership, why a person's no longer there. And especially when members know our communities are tight in the micro gym. So everybody knows everything, but how we communicate it and how my staff will message and how they communicate it. I have to make sure that we're all connected.
Yeah, I really like the idea of a network of trusted advisors. We'll call that the team NOTA, the idea of like people who can help you without spreading things. Here's a thing that I've noticed. If you tell one person something, you told a bunch of people something, and it spreads fast, especially in a tight business like a micro gym or a coaching business. If you tell a staff member, it tells another staff member. How many times have you out there, listeners, been in a conversation where someone says, between you and me, I shouldn't say this, and they tell you some stuff and you're like, whoa. If you told me this, how many other people all of a sudden, the secrets are in the world. I really like to compartmentalize parts of my business and my life. And a really good way to do that is to talk to, say, a two-brain mentor. So when we've had problems, we call our mentor because our mentor doesn't live in the same city, is not connected to any of the people that are involved, is not emotionally attached to anybody, and is obviously sworn to secrecy because you have this very privileged relationship and a high degree of trust. And we talked to Chris Cooper personally, actually, about this one time back when Coop was still doing mentorship calls about a staffing issue. And he gave us some great advice that was not tied to emotion because I was very emotional. It was tied to like data and details. Chris was never going to say, get back to that person or start talking to my mentors. And it's a great way to compartmentalize your life. You can have those same relationships, obviously, with lawyers and other professionals. And again, as a small gym owner with wearing all the hats, you might be like, do I really need a lawyer? At some point, you are going to need a lawyer and it can save you a ton of money. So don't hesitate to do that. Again, I'm going to plug gymlawyers.com there again, because Matthew Becker does do consultations there and can help you out with stuff and tell you, this is what it will cost and this is what it will save you. So do look
Yeah.
at some stuff like that. And it's really important that you do those things. What changes have you made as a result of all the things you've gone through? And again, there's probably a laundry list because you've been in business 20 years, but what are some of the big HR kind of things that you do now to try and prevent as many of these situations as possible, even though some aren't preventable?
Great question. We really lean into two things. Documenting. I document everything.
Yes, I do too.
Everything. I like that. And some people are like, what does the documentation look like? God, grab a scrap piece of paper, write it and stick it in a file. Have a little book. Screenshots.
Photo,
yep. I even have a Google Doc. I will take notes, date, times, details, who, what, when, where, and why. I throw everything in there, just so you can prove that this is, get it out of your head, get it onto paper, what you did, what was the response, who was involved, and document everything. As soon as you feel things might be going off the rails, good, bad, or indifferent, get it down.
And I'm going to jump in. That's so important because if you fire someone, they can say, I didn't do anything, or you can't prove anything. But if you have this litany of like documented stuff, and especially if that's tied to regular reviews and you're saying, hey, you messed up here. We want to fix this. Here are the steps. Oh, you messed up again. If that's documented. It's much, much easier. Keep going.
Yeah, exactly. And then if the situation comes where you have to fire someone, they say, give me an example. And I'm like, oh,
let me thumb through the archives.
Yeah, you've got it there. I mean, ideally, hopefully you have staff that don't have to document. And I tell you, 99.9% of my staff, I don't have to document anything. But in the cases of a few of these, you darn right, my ass was covered.
Yep.
On a few of those. Here's another one that we put in place for access control. We didn't think of this in the beginning. Everybody had a key fob and they had access whenever they wanted. I wanted my staff, come in whenever you want. Yeah. And then we kind of went, no one's allowed in here after 10:30 at night, and you won't get in. You cannot access the gym before 4:45 a.m. So nothing
really good happens in those hours in a gym anyway, right?
Right. Well, in our case, they were snagging equipment in the middle of the night and stuff. So those were just some operational things. Cameras were cameraed everywhere. I have special logins for each of my computers and each of my technology. I know exactly what login is for what system. So in the case of the fraud, I knew exactly what iPad he was using and the date, the time, and the camera confirmed it.
Yep.
I'll
jump in and just say shared passwords, guys. If you're listening, shared passwords, do not share a password. Give everyone their own password for the same reason that I said, you get your own alarm code login. Sorry to interrupt.
Andrea. You got it. That's okay. Another thing that we did, we really lean into this hardcore, is a code of conduct.
I've seen this. I like this. I'm going to link to it. I've seen this in our blog, and we're going to link to this. So listeners, you can check out more. Yeah.
And this is huge for us because every single member that joins the gym, they are required to accept the code of conduct. Every staff in their service agreement, they're required to read and accept the code of conduct. And we lean into this hard. And what that does is it simplifies the firing process, because as an emotional person, I love people. I never want to hurt people or upset them. So I never want to force and say, you did this, you're fired. I can simply now say, you no longer meet the code of conduct we've set for our operations. It's time for you to go. And that has had to happen, unfortunately, for both the member side and staff side. But that is an easy way that we can lean into. In my code of conduct, I have a line in there called moral turpitude, but we've also added a piece that says if you negatively affect the mental health of the members in the community around you, that's grounds for being removed from the community. And of course, any of these situations that we described earlier negatively affect the mental health of the community. So that is a big piece. There have been many questions over the years. Can you stop people from having an affair? Can you tell staff not to have a relationship with a member? We can't.
Nope.
I can't legally tell you to. And we, in our case, and many others have as well, have had so many relationships grow, flourish, come into amazing families, have kids, all the things, because they started a relationship at the gym, which I'm proud of. But when it starts to negatively affect the mental health of the people around, then we got a problem. And that's when I can lean into the code of conduct with no pointing fingers, you slept with so-and-so, you did this, you did that. Sorry, you no longer meet the code of conduct that we have set for our business.
Code of conduct is a really, really good one. And what that does is it sets the tone and puts everyone on the same page coming in. It's not going to solve your problems, right? Like people are still going to do dumb stuff. That is absolutely going to happen. But you can then go back and say, you signed this and this is in violation of this term right here, and let you go. And it's a little easier than saying, according to some vague standards that I've never communicated in my head, you kind of crossed a gray line that we're not sure about and you got to go. And then it's a fight. Whereas if you can hold up the sign, at least it's like, it's a pretty good asset at that point. So I'm sure you've had to do this with clients. You've used that with clients, no doubt.
I have, yes.
Yeah, it happens too.
It's unfortunate, it is, but we remove somebody from their contractual obligations effective immediately. And again, it was an easy conversation. And anytime a member comes to us and says, hey, why did that member get canned? Oh, they didn't meet the code of conduct. I don't have to get into the details. They no longer met the code of conduct that we hold our community standards to.
Yeah. And I love that too, because the details are messy. And when you start getting into the details, it gets really bad because then it's because of a gossip session. Gossip is different than protecting your business. Protecting your business is like, we hacked this off. We moved on for the good of the business. Gossiping is then like trying to win, trying to throw some slime on someone on the way out or whatever. It's not good. And it doesn't make you look good. And then of course, if you start doing it, they start doing it. Then you see these horrid Facebook threads with I've seen them, gym owners fighting with departed staff members and negative Google reviews and all these attacks and litigation and slander and libel and the whole thing. It's awful. So code of conduct is a really good one. Keeping your trap shut is another really good one. Limiting as much information as you can. Hold yourself to a high professional standard. That code of conduct applies to you listeners as much as it does to your staff members and your clients. Is it good policy as a business owner to share private details about people as you fire them? It's not. Don't do that. Right?
It's not. And we've worked extremely hard, and I still do, and I always will, to build trust with our team and trust with our members. We set the standards of how we hold ourselves to. All I have control over is myself and my husband and how we conduct our character, our values, and how we treat people. And there have been times where we have to lean into the code of conduct and someone's got to be let go. Typically it's a member that everybody else gets upset about. And at that point I can say, I need you to trust me.
Yep.
This was the right thing for us. Yep. I don't have to answer anymore. I didn't have to give the details because we've worked very hard at building that reputation. And that does not come overnight. Do you remember in COVID when people were starting to lose memberships and everybody was so hopeful that their members would keep paying and support them? And I said, nothing you're doing at this point will save a membership. It's everything you've done in the 5 years leading up to, March 17th, when the world shut down here, that will save your business.
Mm-hmm. Something I learned was an old Ben Bergeron article, I believe back in the CrossFit Journal days. Ben was talking about if you speak behind someone's back to a third person, what does that say to the third person? And what it says is, I will speak behind your back when you're not present. And so you got to think about that. When you say things to other people about those other people, you're telling them that you will gossip about them when they're not present. The best thing you can do is keep your mouth shut, or even go so far as to defend people when they're not around and say, hey, we don't do that here.
You got it.
That's a high standard.
100%.
Another thing that Chris Cooper taught me, your staff are not your friends. And that's an interesting one because as you grow up as a brand new gym owner, a founder, you might build up this thing where, your great athlete and friend and buddy becomes your coach and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden you've got these awful situations where you need to change things for the good of the business, but you're now trying to deal with your best buddy. That's really, really hard. So as you professionalize your business, standards, practices, SOPs, codes of conduct, procedures, everything that goes along with being a professional in your business. And that means that your staff are not your friends anymore. My wife and I had to deal with this where our staff were very much our friends. We had them over for family gatherings and dinners and holiday stuff. And those were wonderful, but it made it very difficult to make changes over the course of the whole thing. So after a while, we started to pull back from that a little bit. And I still feel sort of regretful about that because I really liked the early days in those relationships. But the fact of the matter is our business has evolved and we no longer wanted to be friends because that made the business so difficult. Did you have something like that happen over your 20-year career?
I think we do. I mean, I do, and I still feel so connected to our staff. At the same time, of course, there's different levels of friendships within them. Yeah. When we've had most of our staff have been with us for 12 to 15 years at least. So they are friends, they're staff, But then I have to very clearly say, okay, who am I calling when my car breaks down at 3:00 in the morning and I'm on the side of the road? That's a friend.
Yeah.
You know, I don't call every one of my staff members, even though, gosh, if I needed to, they would be there as I would for them. But you have a few of those wake up calls where you're like, thought we were friends, but
you can't let friendship get in the way of running your business. And that's not because you're a cold-hearted money bags business person. It's because your business provides your income for your family. And it serves your clients. So you have a duty to do that. The thing that I would do, the simple solution for me would be regular staff evaluations on a schedule. Make sure that it's understood that you're going to come in every, 3 to 6 months or whatever on a schedule. We're going to do staff evaluations. At those staff evaluations, no matter who you are, I'm going to give you something to work on and improve. Doesn't matter if you're at A+, I'm going to make you even better. We're going to go a little bit further so that no one says, oh, you're picking on me or whatever. You're just giving them something to improve every single time because everyone can have an area of focus to improve on. So that's a really great way to keep your staff in line, keep the doors of communication open. And TrueBrain has tons and tons of resources for staff development that we help clients do exactly this with career roadmaps and evaluations. Andrea, as we close this out, I'm going to ask you for this one because you are a mentor. You do deal with gym owners all the time. Let's say that someone's listening. What is an easy first step that they can do right now, wherever they're at in their entrepreneurial journey, to start getting a little bit better at staffing and HR issues? What can they do today to just move a little bit in the right direction and maybe prevent some of these problems down the road?
Great question. One of the things I find often is when people start a gym, they're very uncomfortable to professionalize their business from the beginning. Meaning we have staff agreements. I was too. Gosh, we were open about 8 years before we presented staff with an agreement. And they were like, why are we doing this now? Just being confident to let your staff know this is a new way we're doing. Maybe you lean into your mentor. I often tell my clients, blame me. I'm helping you professionalize the back end of your business. And this is helpful for them. Yeah. So when you put these structures in place, don't have to let staff think that they've done something wrong and that's why you're doing staff agreements and evaluations and such. This is a good way. This is how we professionalize our business. I want to make you guys the best you can. Yep. And that is a simple way that be comfortable with professionalizing the back end. Even if it is a small business, you only got 1 or 2 staff, you're setting the stage now for growth.
And I'm going to make that. I love that advice. That's such a great piece of advice to start professionalizing things with staffing agreements. I'll give you the simplest one example of all. If you have a member or a staff person who trades something for cleaning, document the relationship and say, I am asking you to do this on this schedule in exchange for this at this value. Yeah. Lay it out. How many times, and I've done this 17 times myself, have you had a person who's trading a membership for cleaning just go away for the weekend and not do the cleaning, but still get the membership? It happens all the time. That's the simplest example I can give you. You can prevent a ton of this stuff if you just lay out the details. Talk to a lawyer if you need to, but get all the details of standards of employment in place. If you start doing that, even in one small situation like your cleaner right now, you're going to be in the right step. So Andrea, thank you for giving people actionable stuff they can do today. And thanks for sharing some of those details, which I'm sure probably hurt your heart a little bit just now.
You know what? They're water under the bridge these days because I got bigger and better things coming down the pipe. So we're happy.
And that's the other lesson to take out of this. Stuff happens. Good entrepreneurs get help from a mentor, move onwards and upwards all the time. Thanks, Andrea.
You are welcome. Thank you.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. This is Run a Profitable Gym. I'm Mike Warkentin. Please hit subscribe wherever you're watching or listening so you don't miss a single episode.